that kind of stuff there and updates. So it's pretty good. Now it's good.
Yeah, I'll drop some stuff off. Like I said, we'll pick them up.
Okay.
And make a way for some. Do you want to start people? Do you want to
Good. I'll talk to you about that. Okay. I'll give it to Jeremy on how he does the schedule.
Yes, I still think it. Regular.
Oh, you do your own.
Okay. Forward stuff is important. Okay.
Bring it over. Feel good.
I was getting wet with it. Yeah, that's great.
It's on in here. We liking the gym. Hey, Joe.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
There's two people I recognize.
We could open the blind strategically.
Hi, Linda. Yeah, let's give it a shot. There we go. Might wake us up a little.
Nice. Nice. Why? You're still working there? Well, yes, we got a little bit of T's and I's to talk. It's a hard question. What are we doing with this? We've never seen it before. Hey. Keep up the good work, guys.
You're not sticking around?
Nah. I'll see you guys. Steve's gonna set up a meeting, so I'm gonna do a presentation for you guys. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Joe.
I'm just doing strictly volunteer stuff now.
Good for you.
All right, have a good one.
Have a good day.
All right, we'll get started in just a minute. We have 3 members right now. That's what we were going to talk about that today. You want to see? You can go grab Carrie, see if she's in there.
You wanted me to run off.
Message Tanya. Usually.
Sure, yeah, she's usually on.
Bye-bye.
Oh, I don't think I have her cell phone number.
She's giving us an office. Oh, she just joined. There we go.
All right. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and get started now that we have 4 exec members. So let's start out with introductions. I'm Jeff Goldman, Chief Probation Officer. We'll go around the table, people that are in person first, and then we'll go up to the screen. All right.
Angie Coffey, probation.
Merrill Stroud probation.
Brendan Brown, probation.
Tricia Sims, Alliance for Workforce Development.
I've got a sheriff's office too.
Cormac Sheriff.
All right, let's go up to the screen. Start, I guess your guys' order is all different. So just go for it. Yeah. You got to unmute yourself first though, Martin.
Thanks. Martin Polk, Chief Fiscal Officer for the county, working out of the CEO's office. Good to be here. Thanks.
Janelle Cazares with Behavioral Health Clinical Administrator.
Hi, Tanya Clark, Courts.
Jesse Wilson.
Lucas. Oh, there you go. Go ahead.
Sorry, Lucas. Jesse Wilson, District Attorney's Office.
Lucas Turner, HHSA.
Mike Sidnicki, probation.
Alicia Burgett, Under Sheriff, Sheriff's Office.
Thanks. Okay, so a roll call as far as exec members go. So we have 5 here, I think now. Yeah. All right, so we have enough. And so before, maybe I'll skip down to number 7, just so we can get this out of the way before we approve the minutes. Bylaws, I have bylaws on here. So in talking to other counties, CCPs, a lot of them have bylaws that discuss, the number of times they meet, when the executive committee meets and the public committee, or whether that's combined. And another piece of that is voting. And I know we've talked about this before as to, is it is it just automatically the second? Is it someone that's assigned, and how we want to go about that? Or is it just the exec member? And so I think now's a good time to have a discussion. One, if we want to have bylaws to kind of structure some of this stuff. And 2, the voting piece of how we want to go about organizing that, whether we want it to be just the executive member, whether we want it to be an assigned person in their absence, or we want it to be, whoever's second command of whatever that structure is in that department as that assigned person, or any variation thereof. So, any thoughts on that? No thoughts.
I think it would be great to have a method to the madness and decide whether we want to allow it or not. So I support that effort.
Any ideas on what that structure would look like, or?
I think it would be good to have a predetermined second.
Yeah.
It's just.
Great. What's up there? Tanya, Jesse? Nothing? So, and then with that, do we want to create, and not saying that they have to be in any, 100-page document, do we want to create bylaws that talk about how often we're going to meet and all that kind of stuff? And I mean, one piece, we could do is just, I could put it out to other counties to get samples of those bylaws and bring them back for the next meeting to see what that is. I think maybe now we could vote on who we want to vote. And then incorporate that in the bylaws as we refine those a little bit more and have some examples to kind of go off of. Does that make sense, or?
Do you want to maybe send them out in advance of the meeting?
Yeah. When I don't have any samples yet, so yeah. All right. I'm guessing, judging by the reaction, I'm guessing that works. And do we want to, from what I'm hearing, is that we do want to have it set up to where it's, and I won't have the exact verbiage, but essentially the executive member can assign a person to vote in their absence. And do we want to have that kind of set in stone? So until they change that, so it's not changing every week or every time we have a meeting, that person assigns that person, and for here on out, that's that person until we hear otherwise, as far as voting goes.
I think it's a good idea. I spoke to Cheryl just right before we came over here, and that's what her concern was, is she wants to make sure that it's whoever's being designated has knowledge of the CCP, and that there's some type of close relationship between the department head and that person.
Okay. All right. So does anyone want to make a motion relative to that, or does someone want to try to articulate a motion?
Well, this is from the bylaws. So you're talking about executive members, the motions, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Someone other than myself?
Make a motion that we establish predetermined seconds to voting members in our absence on the CCP.
Okay.
Is that sufficient?
Yeah. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? I guess the only discussion I would say is, do we want to, I guess this would be a second kind of process. Do we want to determine that today? Or do we want the people that are here determine that today, or just to make it easier for the next time?
Determine who the seconds are or
Yeah,
determine,
like who their person is.
since Sheriff's not here, I would. So, well, I guess you could reach out to her after.
Yeah, I mean, we still have enough. If 5 people say this is who they want, then it makes it a little bit easier, even though 2 people aren't here.
I have to think on it,
Okay.
who I would have, so I wouldn't want to make a decision today, but.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
I would want it to be one of my department heads and not one who's already a voting member, and the one I would nominate is not here, so I don't want to nominate without telling the person.
Okay. All right, so relative to the motion that Ryan stated and Carrie seconded, can I get a vote? All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none. I'm guessing unclicking mute, Jesse, that was a aye. All right. All right, so motion carries. I mean, at least for me, I mean, seeing that I usually set the meetings, I'll probably be here. But I mean, I haven't talked to Steve about it, but he's been here the most, so I would maybe put Steve on there for mine.
Is there a stipend for this?
Well, it's during negotiation. Anyone else want to say who that second would be now?
I think we should consider we have a board member who's a member. CCP.
Yeah, we actually had one of the board members was going to come today and they don't last minute. All right, well, hearing nothing, I'll move on to the next thing. So approval of CCP minutes. I think in the packet that Linda sent out, everyone should have got the minutes from June 29th, 2023. Did everyone have a chance to look over those? And if so, can I get a motion to approve those minutes? All right, I'll make the motion. Make a motion to approve the minutes from the Community Corrections Partnership from June 29th, 2023. I guess second. You were there, right? Any discussion? The only discussion or modification I have is that the mission that's at the top of just the on the template is not the mission that we went through on the strategic planning. So we'll just need to update that on the updated mission. And I think that's just because it was a template for the minutes. All right, with that change, I'm going to take a vote on approval of the minutes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. I'm waiting for you, Jesse.
I saw it.
There it is.
I got a head nod. Okay. See, no one opposed or any abstentions, motion carries. All right, next is public comment. I don't think there's any public around, so unless someone has any public comment, we'll skip over that. Next is innovation funds update, which Angie and Georgette met about that, and so they're going to present kind of the.
Well, I didn't prepare Georgette to present. I feel bad, so I'll just present what.
I just said you guys met. I didn't say she was
okay,
presenting.
I didn't want to. You feel like you were on the spot.
Just kind of go over the ideas that were generated from that discussion. Yes. Some of the questions we might have about how we want to move forward with that fund.
I'm attempting to share my screen and it's being problematic. Hold on just a moment. Interesting. Yeah, there we go. So what we had talked about in terms of the innovation fund, so just as a kind of a brief reminder, we discovered a while ago that 10% of the growth funds from all 2011 realignment funds were supposed to be going into an innovation fund since the 15-16 fiscal year. That hadn't been happening. So we finally got that rectified. The auditor has set up an innovation fund for us now. Working with them, this is not showing up correctly. This is very weird. Maybe I just moved it around inadvertently. Yeah, there we go. Working with the auditor's office, there's some corrections that they have to do to the fund, but we have a little over 200,000 in the innovation fund at this point. And what we had talked about was doing a kind of a similar to a request for proposal type of program that we'd seen some other counties doing. Got an example, I think, from Yolo County and one other county, where you put it out to local CBOs. You advertise that you have this innovation fund for different, offer funding opportunities for innovative projects focused on serving justice-involved populations. We're looking at, trying to make it so that it's not limited to our funding cycle. So if we put in, we're going to have $100,000 worth of innovation fund projects this year. That would be part of our CCP budget at the beginning of the year. And then, that way, 6 months down the road, if Common Goals or somebody comes up with some project that they want to start, they can apply for this. And they're not tied to only getting it during our funding cycle. That's one of the things we thought, in terms of being a little bit more flexible with this. But so Georgette and I had kind of met and looked at, a process for this and what it would look like. And so based on some other examples, came up with this form. It's kind of hard to, I'm going to keep moving it around whenever I try and move my screen. Kind of hard to see if I don't scroll out a little bit, but ultimately this is what we would put out to the community, what the funding is for, the background, the purpose, some sort of funding schedule, although that would have to be modified a little bit because initially I was thinking it would go along with the budget process. If there's, one of the things to discuss is if there's a max amount we want to allow for one project. And then what the funding request format looks like, for example. Okay, let me stop using my touchscreen. Sorry, guys. Funding request format. Jiminy Christmas. Okay, sorry. I didn't mouse now. All right, here, just only scroll. So the funding request format, kind of showing them what needs to be part of it, what are the goals and objectives of the project or program, who the target population is, how you're going to contact or engage, how many people are you expected to reach, how will you measure or evaluate that they were reached. So just trying to really break down, give them an idea of what we expect to see in these proposals. And then the rest of this form just is a little bit more information, sort of what the funding requirements are, and how this would look. And then there's a separate form. This requires a little bit of modification. So once we've had a discussion about if this sounds good to everybody, we figured we'd kind of finalize what goes in these forms. There's also, so funding request procedures. So this is more kind of internal for us of what this looks like each year as we go through, new members and new things. We have something that kind of lays out what the plan was for these funding requests. And then also permissible uses. So the Innovation Fund, another little background piece, is the Innovation Fund can be essentially used for any project that falls within the areas that those growth funds went to already. The trial court security. In this example, we were calling it revocation proceedings, but it's the DAPD growth fund. Juvenile Justice Growth Fund, and the Community Corrections Growth Fund. So really, anything that would be kind of an eligible expense within any of those areas would be, you know, if someone develops a program related to any of those areas, it would be an eligible expense for this innovation fund. So this is just kind of a little layout of what permissible uses of funds are. Anything you can think of that I kind of missed on that, Georgette?
Just, I think we went back and forth a little bit in terms of the committee, like, and I think the way it's written right now is the executive committee, so it would basically come to the board, the CCP membership to decide what projects are approved. But
right.
I don't know if we would want to set like an internal committee that would then review and like do the logistics of bringing it to the CCP for consideration. And then just reiterate that max, I think that having a max grant amount is really helpful. One, so that people know what they can sort of have an expectation of like, does this project, you know, align with the needs? And then, so we're not being asked to, you know, grant 100% of the available funds to one project. So we get more coverage that way. And could really use recommendations, I think, from this body as to what people think is a reasonable amount for that.
Yeah. I think one last piece, sorry, real quick, was we had talked initially about who's eligible to apply for this. And one of the examples they had, you know, county departments could be eligible to apply and CBOs. Internally kind of talking about it, we felt like, you know, county departments already get their bite at the apple through the regular CCP funding request process. So if you know, if there was a different program or something that wanted to be, you know, somebody wanted to request, that could just go through the regular CCP request process versus, and leaving this innovation fund specifically for external partners was the thought process.
And that was what I was about to say, the same type of thing, although we did discuss that, like, I think the example is like transportation or something, but if transportation wanted to partner with, you know, Turning Point or something like that, and they were kind of the sponsor to help them shepherd it through the process, then that's fine. I mean, the request would be officially from like Turning Point or something, but yeah, if it's just a county agency, if it was like, well, probation, we want to do this, then we could just include that in our normal CCP request of the funds that we normally get. But if it was some other entity that we wanted to partner with, we could kind of sponsor them, for lack of a better term, I guess, to get those funds. So, I mean, I think the discussion is, you know, well, anything about this relative to other ideas about how we approach it, max amount, you know, whether we want to have a separate committee to kind of filter through. I mean, I don't know, but I mean, I guess it depends on the breadth and the depth of the request that we get, what kind of logistical support we need, and any other things. I mean, whether we want to have any sort of thing that kind of nails down like what our definition of innovation is. You know, is innovation something that, does it have to have been tested? Does it like something that's brand new and they've never used before, or something that they've lost funding for? Like, what can someone apply for? And again, like Georgette said, just to help, so we're not wasting some CBO's time applying for something that we have no intention of funding.
Do you, I mean, this might be getting kind of ahead down the road a little bit, but like, is this something that potentially the CPO could apply for every year? Or are we looking at this more like a lot of grants where there's money to kind of seed and get started, and then hopefully during the time of that program, they kind of develop other ways to kind of, you know, bring things into the county? Or could this be like if somebody comes up with a program that's either new or been around and it's really working, it's really getting good results, would this be a continued source of funding in the future?
I think that's a discussion. I think that if we lock ourselves in, it kind of limits innovation. I mean, I would think maybe if it was some program that we really hated to lose, and that might be a discussion that we have of putting it in the regular CCP budget.
That was what I was going to suggest, because we've built up a bit of an innovation fund from not having this set up for a number of years, but it's not going to be a ton of dollars every year. I mean, obviously depending on realignment and how that goes, but that's, variable
So
income.
what is that approximately every year, like 200,000 that would go into this, or?
No, I mean, like, for example, this year, our projected growth from, for the community corrections piece is only like 25,000. But I mean, obviously, with realignment funding,
So it's 10% of growth, not 10%?
10% of growth.
Oh, okay.
10% of
Yeah,
growth.
that's a small amount.
Sorry, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, one of the years we had $500,000 worth of growth, so that would have been a $50,000 deposit into this with just from that, and that's the biggest piece. The community corrections growth is typically the biggest piece of growth that we receive.
But I think that's somewhat, I mean, obviously it's a debate, but that kind of answers the question of like capping and how,
Yeah.
so we're trying to look at it as like helping somebody to get on their, an organization to get on their feet,
Yeah.
get some materials or something like that, something they really want to do, because it's not, I mean, yes, it's 200,000 right now, but that's because it's since the,
15, 16.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of helped out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, it seemed about like the agent to say, the grant that Mike then facilitates every.
That's what I was gonna mention too, yeah.
I think it's like about 15,000.
Yeah, considering the size of the grant, an equivalent model that we have is what's called community initiative funding, and there's 2 grants of 15,000. Because they're so small, it's typically for like a one-time need and not an ongoing program. I can see this one being a similar process, but for like a pilot program that's innovative that might trickle out to something else.
Any suggestions on a max funding, or does everybody feel like that's a?
The way CIF used to work is like there would be an annual amount, and it sometimes used to bounce around. Now it's been fairly stable, but like once we know our growth amount, we can decide that's the amount we're putting out for coming year.
Any comments from the folks on Teams?
So more clarification though, the way it's written right now, we have 2 blanks. So not only for the specific grant maximum amount, so like $15,000, $20,000, something like that, but also the max we want to award in a fiscal year. So
Right.
you don't necessarily have to set that at the $200,000, right? You could kind of space that out over some coming year. So maybe it's $50,000 per year total that we're going to award. So we need kind of 2 numbers.
I think that's what we were thinking, right? Well, we didn't do this for years, we were gonna build it up, so we had some money in there, right? It was all.
It was strategic. Yeah.
So, I guess the things that I'd like to have decided today are, one, do we like kind of the format for the request, and that piece of it, and how do we want to, I guess there's a couple of things to it. How do we want to advertise that and get that out there? And then how do we want them to give it back to us and get filtered up to the executive committee? And then also the numbers piece of, do we want to look at it every year? Do we want to set, an amount and then say we can do X amount of grants? I guess I would go into the cap and the grant request amount. And so I think those are the things we should decide today. I mean, those are things I can think of off the top of my head to be able to move this forward.
I mean, thinking about, the kind of the form that was introduced last year with kind of the way the reporting was, the request kind of mirrored that from the CBO. I mean, obviously some wording would have to be changed because it's not something that's existing and they're not reporting out. But if we could keep that similar, it would probably help them to, when they have to report into that period or whatever, to keep it very similar. So they're kind of looking at what they're going to be reporting on. So I kind of mirror those 2 documents. I mean, obviously there's going to be alterations to those probably as we move along and move in that process, but I would try to keep it as similar as possible.
So the funding request that the departments submit, which also kind of details what types of data or outcomes or whatever that we're. Refresh my memory on that.
So, I mean, like I said, I don't know how to frame a motion to get all those things captured in there other than move forward with this, but is there any strong thoughts on, let's start with the dollar amount, because that seems the most concrete. Are there any strong thoughts? I mean, we have 200,000, that's from since 2016. You know, do we want to spend it all? Do we want to cap? I mean, starting with the maximum for the year, do you want to cap that at 50,000 or 100,000 or any certain number?
Hey Jeff, it's Alex. What's the anticipated on revenue based on that 10% for next year? Like what does next year's number look like? What's coming into the fund on an annual basis, just assuming next year's number?
Right. Next year's number looks low at this point in time because it's 10% of the growth funds that we receive. And the growth funds, the expected growth funds right now for community corrections, which is, just part of this, is like 25,000. So 10% of that. So we're talking about $2,500.
Wow.
Now, mind you, we just don't know what the economy is going to do and how that's going to really end up looking. But
or maybe a better question is, what is the last 3-year revenue into this fund?
The last 3 years?
On average, the average of the last 3.
Last 3 years has been fairly high, so I'm thinking we've probably been about 60 or 70,000, but I'd have to double check.
Well, then I would think that 50 to 100 would be a number that just kind of makes sense, because we could potentially offset some of that with future revenues in order to not deplete this in 3 years. Does that make sense?
And for round numbers, do we want to, like, just to throw something out, say, my math is right in my head, 45,000 cap and 15,000 for 3 different projects, or?
Yes, I would make that motion.
Second.
Okay.
I'm just curious if there's like a deadline with this, if there's timing pressure.
No.
It seems like a lot of questions to decide in this 15 minutes. Does it make sense to have like a subgroup to circle back with a recommendation that considers all these things? Once we extend what's in the fund balance, I wouldn't even want to do a grant in a year when it's going to be $2,500.
Yeah, I think it's important to take advantage of that mistake that was kind of made, whatever you want to call it. So that now that it's actually got some dollars in it, where we could kind of stretch that out. I mean, yeah.
Well, that's what I was thinking. At 45,000, at least gives us probably adding a couple of years, probably 5 years.
Yeah, and plus, I mean, if there's not requests, or there's 3 requests and only 1 or maybe 2 are viable, it doesn't mean that we have to do 3 per year.
All right, we got one person that wanted a motion to do it at 45 and one that's discussed about postponing, so.
Good any way we do it.
I mean, I'm fine with settling an amount, but it seems like there's other questions to be resolved as well. So maybe that's something that you're just doing offline, so you can support a motion as well.
All right, was that an official motion there, Carrie?
Yes.
All right, well, let's start with that one. Just can I get a second for, I think the motion was a $45,000 max, $15,000 grants. Can I get a second for that? Or is there a second?
Hi,
Alex
this is
already
Tanya. I'll
seconded
second.
Okay.
We got 3 seconds. Just get one of them there, Linda. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes. And then, so I think the second part of that is how we want them to come to us. I mean, in my brain, that can kind of wait. I mean, we can put it out there. I mean, or we can just put it out to the exec committee and we can use all the channels that we have, that we would normally for other situations like this to get the information out to folks as to letting you know it's available to apply for. And then I think maybe kind of seeing what comes in, or we can use, I mean, you and Angie already you being Georgette, kind of already met as a subcommittee. I don't know if you guys want to be the initial kind of point of contact for it. Does that work? Does anyone oppose that? No? All right, so I think, I mean, I don't see that we need to have another motion for anything unless someone sees otherwise. Or do you guys have enough information to move forward?
So just to clarify, we've got the numbers, but then it will be open on a, kind of first come, first served basis, basically.
Yeah,
and then
until the money runs out or
and then
we reset it.
for this current fiscal year, which ends, June 30th, we're doing, if we put this out there, like say on the CCP County website, people could apply for up to $15,000 in this current fiscal year, right? Like,
Well,
are we
so
starting that now? Basically?
ultimately, it's not in the CCP budget this year.
So
We may want to.
But yet the money's there, so.
Can we amend the budget? Add it. Do you want to do that? Like vote here first and then do the behind the other piece of it?
We're going, I mean, the CCP plan is set to go.
November 7th.
Yeah.
So do we want to vote, or I'll make a motion. I'm guessing we just amend it for the 45, right?
Yeah.
To amend the CCP budget to add in this $45,000 so we can award it this fiscal year.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none.
He has a comment in the chat.
Oh.
Yeah. Martin has put some bylaws of the Sac County CCP.
Hey, Jeff, it's Alex. It wasn't clear to me how it was going to be posted and solicited. My feeling is that we should have deadlines posted so that there's at least cutoffs to have a fair process for submission, not an ongoing. I heard someone talk about ongoing. And I think that could potentially be problematic.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think the ongoing was more of, it didn't have to be on the same exact timeline as the budget. But I think we could do like rounds of funding, maybe of like, the first round closes whenever we decide. And then if we don't expend all the funds, to put it back out there, but not beholden to like the same exact timeline. So like if some CBO comes up with some project that they want to do, we still have funds that we can still make it available to them. But I understand what you're saying of like, getting complaints because someone said, well, I didn't know I had to do it by this time. I didn't know you guys were reviewing them by this time, and I would have submitted it 2 weeks earlier or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I think we just need to have, it's almost like an open until filled job, but like first close is this date, and we may fund all of it. We may only fund one, we may fund none, and then it'll be open again. And ultimately it's closed for the fiscal year when the 45,000 is expended. Just, it needs to be clear to the community partners so that there's some fairness in the review processes.
And I mean, I'm willing to leave that date up to the subcommittee to come up with the solicitation and the date. That's okay with everyone? All right, any other discussion on this? No. All right. Strategic plan update. I'm going to start with the data group, and just before Brendan gets into it, I mean, some of the things that I kind of talked to Brendan about before the last meeting of the subgroup, to kind of get them started was, one approach to kind of get some stuff moving as far as some of the data points go is to focus on a couple of things. One was the data points that were mentioned in everybody's requests for funding. I mean, I think that's an easy starting point because those are things that people had already discussed in their funding. Some of the data points that I think I sent this out in an email, that there's new legislation around an audit, and I think it's 15 counties. And it's interesting that some of those things were things that we talked about prior to deciding to do a strategic plan relative to kind of, I think once legislation's been around for a while, the state thinking, you know, and seeing a bunch of fund balances and a bunch of money and things that they want to look at. And so data points around what was in that audit, around realignment, and also some things around some of the topics that we have in our yearly plan that we submit to the Board of Supervisors. And some of those things that we had in there don't actually have numbers attached to them, just some concepts. So attaching some of the data around some of those concepts that we include in our CCP plan. And with that, I'll hand it over to Brendan.
I was just going to walk through the working dashboard if there's time for that.
Yeah, and do you want to talk about, because you guys just met recently, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like you said that some of the stakeholders didn't really have we put it out there open-ended, like what would you want to see on it? We didn't really get much people coming back with, much input. So I think reframe it in terms of how is the money spent and what data we can use to represent that. And at our next meeting, set one up next month, we're gonna, drill down into that. So.
Yeah. We just got Martin on the screen.
Share.
Big.
Share again.
Got Meryl to help you out too.
Read our window.
If you click on the one that shows your Teams meeting,
Yeah. Okay.
there you go. I know, it threw me off too. I thought there used to be, it would show what documents you had.
Yeah,
But it,
exactly.
yeah.
Okay, so this dashboard currently has 3 different pages. Current numbers, historical, and recidivism. On this current number, these are just basically population counts, and also this is overall, this is recidivism from 2015. So it's defined as you start probation in a given year, and then if you have a new conviction within 2 years. So the cohorts are 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2020. This is the average of all those. We're calculating all those years. These are the current PRCS, mandatory supervision. This right here, this 22, that's the average of the jail AB 109 ADP. So that's mandatory supervision, PRCS, and parole. So on this historical one, we've got some filter options. So the 3 time series graphs, you've got PRCS, mandatory supervision, and then this is the jail ADP, AB 109 jail ADP, with each bar representing mandatory supervision, parole, and PRCS. You can filter by 1 year or multiple years. So this is 2023, and all the graphs react to that filter. So, for example, if we look at the last 5 years, you can see that PRCS has been fairly steady. Mandatory supervision, you can see a downward trend. The overall, the AB19 jail ADP population has gone down a little bit. If you kind of want to look at overall, since 2011, the jail ADP peaked. This right here is, I think, 38. But overall, it's been around between 20 and 30. Overall average is 23. If you want to, you can also drill down to the subtypes of the population. So you could look at mandatory supervision in 2023, for example. Any questions on this one? And this is devoted to recidivism. So here, the 11%, that's just an overall patient recidivism, including standard supervision. And if you look at the recidivism of the new conviction event, you got 64% were felony, 36% were misdemeanor. Then you can drill down to the different subtypes. You got supervision, it's pretty low. So this is kind of one of those things where, you know, this is meant to spur questions. So if you look at like adult drug court that's got a higher relative to the rest, a higher recidivism level, this is the kind of thing you can, well, why is that? You know, this is meant to give you questions to ask. So go through these real quick. So
These are all from 15 forward?
Yeah, 2015 to 2020, and the reason I stopped at 2020 is because 2 full years have to elapse in order for the data point to, you know, be sort of complete. So 2020 would have ended at the end of 2022, so we won't have 2021 until the end of 2023. So
This is Alex. Can you go back there to that one? No, you had a different conviction by offense level. I'm just curious. Yeah, that one will work. You had a different one that had even a starker difference between felony and misdemeanor. I was just curious if there's been any analysis as to whether or not the frequency at which misdemeanors are alleged to be committed is actually that low, or if the cases are being disposed of through a probation violation or other disposition as opposed to a conviction.
I can speak to that. Because I kind of go through all of the track through arrests for new convictions or probation violations. And yeah, I mean, what I consistently see typically when it's some lower level misdemeanors, a lot of times if they're on some form of supervision, it's disposed of as part of the plea on the you know, the agreement of the probation violation. So a lot of misto initial charges either never get filed, or if they do, a lot of times they're disposed of during the plea agreement on the probation violations. What I consistently see, at least with the probation population. That answer your question?
Yeah, that answers it. I think that's the statistics there are interesting because we're looking at where we're applying potential resources to try to reduce the incidences of AB 109 qualifying offenses. You know, the statistics are maybe misleading when it shows that the conviction rate of misdemeanors is lower than felony. That doesn't necessarily mean that the arrest rate for misdemeanor versus felony follows the same pattern.
Yeah, definitely doesn't.
And Alex, this is more internal unless CCP. We have started a meeting that we do that's kind of, for those that are familiar with like CompStat style meeting, minus the profanity.
Well,
that goes over stats and looking at things of like, yes, the state has a definition of recidivism, but maybe there's 4 different metrics that we want to look at to get a better picture. And maybe that's arrests, convictions, arrests that were turned into violations versus convictions and those sorts of things, so that we can answer some of those internal questions. One about resources and effectiveness and those sorts of things, and just trying to get more fuller picture than just limited to the statewide definition. I mean, yes, for reporting purposes, we go by the state definition because that's what's required of us, but just so that we can pivot when we need to relative to some of the things that we're doing.
Has there been any discussion, because, I mean, 1950 termed most, probation terms into the 24 months. So obviously the BSCC definition was based on that kind of 3-year term, which most probation, most cases were. Now, has there been any discussion of?
There's been discussion, but no like resolution, so.
Any other questions or thoughts related to this?
So, I mean, I do think, I know it's hard to get started on some of this stuff, hence why we've kind of just gone from, having a starting point of the request and the legislation, some of that kind of stuff. But I do think that it is an opportunity to kind of dig into this stuff a little bit deeper, to, make some more kind of meaningful approaches and take a more meaningful look at some of these things and how they impact the county. And I think that's kind of what, going back to that state audit, that's what some of those things are. And I know probably our purpose for looking at those things might be different than the state's. Again, like I said, I'm guessing that's tied to money, but I think looking at this stuff will position us well for whatever comes out of this audit on the other end, relative to our, I don't want to say defense because I don't want to be on the defensive, but I think people know what I'm saying relative to that. Any other questions about the data work group?
Is this dashboard going to be like posted on the CCP site or?
That's kind of up to everybody. I mean, so I don't know. You can either have give licenses to people who want access, and in doing that, you can keep the security around not being accessible to the public, or you could post it on the public dashboard and then everybody can access it, and you don't need to buy licenses. So that's a decision that has to be made. But the RBL licenses are less than $10 a month per user.
So why don't you guys discuss that at the pros and cons of that at your next data work group, I think. We're running a little short on time. The next thing I had on here was outreach. So just real quick, we had talked a while back on the potentially doing kind of an EBP, evidence-based practices 101, for not just members of the CCP, but potentially CBOs and members of the public and whomever else wanted to attend. There's a couple ways to go about this. I mean, it could be someone internally in this group that gives that presentation, which I kind of shy away from because I think that even if it's the same information, usually it's received a little bit more if it's from a technical assistance type provider. And so that's the other option, is contracting with a technical assistance provider. I did reach out to some that said they'd be willing to do it. I just wanted to check in with this group because, I mean, I think this would also be something that we try to have to fund, or I'd have to see how much it costs and try to fund. I don't think it would be that expensive. It's probably mostly travel to get the person here than the cost of the actual training. Is that something that this group is interested in doing, of having kind of an EBP 101 refresher discussion? I mean, we all have a lot of new staff. I know we do a lot of training in it, but there's also new people.
So if you're thinking on the level of like, just for CCP staff that that kind of thing, which I think would be beneficial, but could this also be something if it was like maybe if it was agreed that it was kind of a TA provider to kind of discuss that, but this could also be a time to introduce, if you got the CBO day, to this innovation funding and stuff like that. So that could kind of.
And it might help them be more of a mandate that they have some of this information to apply because they understand the concepts. I also think that inviting CBOs in the community helps us with that community outreach piece that we decided upon in the strategic planning process. So any concerns, discussion about kind of researching the cost and maybe doing it outside of the membership of the CCP of providing some sort of training. You know, is everyone in favor of that? I see a head nod. See some head nods over there. Okay, so by the next meeting, I'll have kind of a proposal of what that looks like for that training. The next one was community meeting. Like I said, we had talked about some outreach, and a handful of us have done some Rotary groups and stuff like that. I would like to, and maybe by the next meeting, since we're running short on time, I'll have some sort of proposal about this, but I would like to have some more, like a more formal outreach for people that are specifically interested in like criminal justice topics, and maybe at least introducing them to this group, because that was a big thing in the plan, was that most people have no clue. They've heard realignment and they've heard, you know, whatever their personal take on it is, but not really about how that looks or operates in the county. So just putting together something that, you know, I've done in the past of having some kind of guided kind of public meetings relative to educating about the CCP. Any questions, concerns about that? The last one, Alex, if you're still there, was the law enforcement work group. And I know we were going to meet and discuss, because it's been a while, and just kind of the purpose and the framework around that's kind of, I think, dissipated a little bit. But I don't know if you have an update, or if you want to just schedule to meet about that again at some point.
Yeah, I think the update was that you and I were trying to put times together, and we got stifled by a number of different things, illness and otherwise. So not a real big update, other than to say we're just trying to search for relevancy on it. We want to make sure that whatever we create has meaning for those that are involved in it. And that's what I know I was kind of struggling with. I want to pick your brain. So I think that'll be the next step, is get that meeting together again. And winter time might be easier to do because summer was so crazy for all of us.
Right, and so the next thing was bylaws. We already talked about that. So moving on, CCP report and Board of Soup presentation. So every year we have to put together a plan. The plan hadn't changed much the first almost decade or so, I would say. Recently we've made some changes, and the changes are just moving kind of beyond just stating the history of AB 109 and some generic stuff, and putting a little more information about what we're doing. So this year I included basically the blurb of the purpose that everyone put in their funding request, as are the things that we're doing within the CCP, and a few things around strategic planning, a little snapshot of the dashboard, so a little bit of data. And that will go to the board on 11/7, and they want a presentation. So everyone's welcome to come. You know, I intended that probably me giving that presentation on 11/7. There wasn't a whole lot of feedback when I sent, if people wanted corrections and stuff. I did get a request from the Sheriff's Department, but I did email Shannon saying, like, we hit over the 1 month part, and I had to start it in the board process. So we kind of missed that window, because I never got any concrete things, and they gave me the date of the presentation, so I couldn't push that back anymore. So it's essentially, I think I just updated some of the language in yours to make it contemporary, instead of like, this did happen. And I think I took out some of the COVID stuff out of there, just because it was not applicable anymore. So I can send that out, or Angie can send that out, the final copy that's routed right now to the Board of Soups. And does anyone have any questions about the report? And so the report, I think, if I remember correctly, it's kind of a weird one. Doesn't have to be approved by the CCP, but it has to be, to not move forward, it has to be denied by four-fifths
Yeah.
vote denial. So it's kind of like a reverse thing. So I've never seen that happen, so I don't expect it to happen this time. But like I said, and the purpose of that is by turning that in before the end of the year, we get an additional 150, 100,000 added to our budget. And that's just set by, I think, small is 100, medium 150, and large counties 200 or something like that. And that's just getting this over to the BSCC, and then they post it up on the BSCC website with all the other counties' plans. Any questions about that? All right. Any other public comment? I don't see any other public. Can I get a motion to adjourn with 30 seconds left? Can I get a second? Oh, there we go. That was the first one that we got a quick response on. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
And I didn't hear any no's or abstentions, so meeting closed at 11:59. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
You have to sit here, yeah. Modifications.
We have
I just saw that hit my watch.
He's good.
Well, that's the spirit of winning.